The last thing I expected when I installed a flagpole to honor my late father, a proud veteran, was to go to war myself. Not on a battlefield, but in my own front yard. My HOA president, Karen Rollins, a woman who seemed to embody everything Karen stands for, called my 20-foot display of patriotism divisive and demanded its removal. She thought she could intimidate me, make me back down. She had no idea that honoring my father meant more to me than any HOA rule. So, I sued. And the court's decision? It didn't just let me keep my flag. It forced Karen to perform a daily ritual that would forever remind her of what true American spirit looks like. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The sun, a benevolent orb in the crisp morning sky, cast long shadows across my meticulously manicured lawn. I stood there, a lump forming in my throat, watching the last few feet of the flagpole disappear into the freshly dug earth. It wasn't just a pole. It was a monument, a silent testament to a man who had shaped my entire life, my late father. He had served 2 tours in Vietnam. A quiet hero who rarely spoke of the horrors he witnessed, but lived every day with an unwavering sense of duty and love for his country. When he passed away 6 months ago, the silence in my life had been deafening. This flagpole, a sturdy, gleaming 20-foot sentinel, was my way of filling that void, of keeping his spirit alive, of honoring his sacrifice. It was a tangible piece of my grief, my pride, standing tall for everyone to see. My hands, calloused from years of working on classic cars, a passion my father and I shared, a quiet legacy of grease and laughter, now trembled slightly as I tamped down the soil around the base. I imagined him, a younger version, standing beside me, offering gruff advice, a twinkle in his eye. He would have loved it, loved the symbolism, the unadorned patriotism. This wasn't just a flagpole. It was a connection to him, a way for me, Logan Prescott, a 35-year-old mechanic with a heart full of memories, to say, "Thank you, Dad." I stepped back, admiring my handiwork. The pole stood proudly, a beacon of defiance against the mundane uniformity of the suburban landscape. Our neighborhood, Heritage Oaks, was known for its strict HOA rules, its pristine lawns, and its almost unnerving sense of order. Every house looked the same, every shrub trimmed to perfection. I'd always found it a bit stifling, but it was safe, predictable, and had good schools, which had been the primary draw when I bought my home 5 years ago. I thought I had blended in, become another cog in the meticulously organized machine. I had no idea my flagpole was about to become a wrench in their perfect gears. I hadn't even finished raking the last of the displaced earth when I saw her, Karen Rollins, the self-appointed Empress of Heritage Oaks, president of the Homeowners Association, and a woman who seemed to derive immense pleasure from enforcing every arcane rule in their ridiculously thick rulebook. She was 61, with a perpetual scowl etched into her features, a perfectly coiffed blonde bob, and a penchant for brightly colored tracksuits. Her presence was always announced by the sharp click of her perfectly polished shoes on the pavement, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of most residents. She approached my yard with the determined stride of the general marching into battle. Her eyes, usually narrowed in suspicion, now widened in what I could only describe as pure outrage as they fixed on my flagpole. "Mr. Prescott." Her voice, a high-pitched, indignant squawk, pierced the tranquil morning air. It carried the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "What, pray tell, do you think you are doing?" I turned, squaring my shoulders, my initial feeling of peace giving way to a familiar sense of exasperation. "Good morning, Ms. Rollins," I replied, trying to keep my voice even, polite, but firm. "As you can see, I'm installing a flagpole for the American flag." I gestured towards the freshly dug earth, hoping a subtle appeal to patriotism might somehow soften her. I should have known better. Karen's perfectly manicured hand flew to her chest, as if I had personally attacked her. A flagpole? In this community? Mr. Prescott, are you aware of the covenants and restrictions of Heritage Oaks? She practically spat the words, as if the very idea of a flagpole was an affront to civilization itself. Section 4.3, subsection B, clearly states, no permanent external structures exceeding 6 feet in height are permitted. Without prior written architectural committee approval, and I can assure you, no such approval was granted for this monstrosity. She gestured wildly at the pole, as if it were a towering eyesore. I tried to explain, to appeal to reason. Ms. Rollins, this isn't just any structure. This is a flagpole for the American flag. My father was a veteran. He served our country. This is a tribute to him, to his service. I hoped that invoking his memory, the profound meaning behind my actions, might temper her bureaucratic fervor. But Karen Rollins, it seemed, was immune to sentiment. Her eyes, cooled and calculating, narrowed further. Mr. Prescott, whether your father was a veteran or not, is entirely irrelevant to the architectural guidelines of this community. A flagpole, especially one of this height. She emphasized the word "this" with disdain, is visually disruptive. It is divisive. Divisive? I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. How is honoring my country and my father divisive? It's patriotism. The word felt foreign and grand in the mundane context of our conversation, yet it was undeniably true. Karen sniffed, her nose wrinkling as if I had just introduced a foul odor into her pristine world. Patriotism, as you call it, Mr. Prescott, can be interpreted in many ways. Some might find such a prominent display aggressive. Others might feel excluded. We strive for uniformity and harmony in Heritage Oaks, not overt political statements in our front yards. Her lips thinned into a judgmental line. Remove it, Mr. Prescott. You have exactly 24 hours to comply, or face immediate fines and legal action from the Homeowners Association. She turned on her heel, her track-suited figure marching back down the sidewalk, leaving me standing there, dumbfounded. The sun still shone, the birds still chirped, but the peace of the morning was shattered. My tribute to my father, a simple act of remembrance, had become a battleground. Karen Rollins had no idea that she had just poked a sleeping bear. My father had fought for this country, for the right to display its flag. I wasn't about to let a power-hungry HOA president take that right away from me, especially not when it was tied to his memory. The fight had just begun, and Karen Rollins was about to learn that some things were bigger than architectural guidelines. The 24 hours Karen Rollins had so imperiously granted me came and went, with my flagpole standing as defiantly as ever. I had spent that day not dismantling my tribute, but researching. I dug through legal texts, scoured online forums, and eventually found my salvation, the freedom to display the American Flag Act of 2005. This federal law, enacted by Congress, essentially stated that no homeowners association could prevent a homeowner from displaying the American flag on their property, provided it was done respectfully. There were nuances, of course, about size and placement, but my 20-foot pole, intended for a standard 3BI 5-foot flag, was well within reasonable limits. Karen Rollins, in her relentless pursuit of uniformity, had overlooked a crucial piece of federal legislation. Armed with this knowledge, and a newfound sense of righteous indignation, I waited. I knew Karen wouldn't hesitate to follow through on her threat. True to form, exactly 25 hours after her initial pronouncement, a cease and desist letter arrived from the HOA's legal counsel. It was a dense, jargon-filled document, threatening fines, liens, and ultimately, forced removal of my flagpole if I did not comply within 7 days. It cited every obscure HOA bylaw but conveniently omitted any mention of federal law. I took the letter to a local attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda Vance, who specialized in property rights. She had a kind but firm demeanor, and when I explained the situation, her eyes lit up with a familiar spark of defiance. "Karen Rollins, you say?" She chuckled, shaking her head. "She's been a thorn in the side of this community for years, always pushing the boundaries of her authority. Well, Mr. Prescott, it seems she's finally stepped in it." Brenda confirmed my research. The freedom to display the American Flag Act trumps any HOA bylaws, Mr. Prescott. Her demands are unenforceable. We have a clear case. She explained the process, the potential for a lengthy legal battle, the costs involved. I didn't care. This wasn't about money. It was about principle, about my father, about the fundamental right to honor him in a way that felt meaningful to me. "Sue them," I told Brenda, my voice calm, resolute. "Sue the HOA. I'm not taking that flagpole down." And so, the legal battle began. The initial skirmishes were typical, a flurry of filings, motions, and countermotions. The HOA, through their legal team, insisted on their right to maintain community aesthetics and property values. We, on the other hand, argued for my federally protected right to display the flag. The local newspaper, always on the lookout for a good human interest story, picked up on the dispute. "Veteran son fights HOA over flagpole," read the headline. Public opinion, predictably, swung heavily in my favor. Anonymous letters of support started arriving at my doorstep, small acts of solidarity that fueled my resolve. Karen Rollins, however, seemed impervious to public sentiment. She dug in her heels, convinced she was in the right, a tireless crusader for HOA tyranny. The case eventually made its way to court. The courtroom was small, stuffy, and filled with a palpable tension. I sat beside Brenda, my heart pounding, but a strange sense of calm settled over me as I thought of my father. He wouldn't have backed down from a fight for what was right, and neither would I. Karen Rollins, immaculately dressed as always, sat across the aisle with her legal team, her expression a tight, disapproving mask. She refused to even glance in my direction. Her lawyer, a smooth-talking man with an air of condescension, presented the HOA's arguments with practiced ease, citing various precedents about community standards and property rights. When it was our turn, Brenda Vance was concise and powerful. She presented the federal act, detailing its legislative intent and its clear protection of a homeowner's right to display the American flag. She spoke passionately about my father's service, tying the flagpole directly to his memory, to the very freedoms he had fought for. She painted Karen Rollins as a petty tyrant, abusing her authority, attempting to strip a veteran son of his right to honor his country and his family. I even had the chance to testify, to explain the profound personal significance of the flagpole, the quiet solace it brought me in my grief. I spoke from the heart, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering as I looked directly at Karen. She finally looked back, a flicker of something in her eyes, but it quickly vanished behind her usual mask. The judge, a stern but fair woman, listened intently to both sides. After 2 days of arguments, she called a recess. The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. I paced outside, my mind racing, replaying every moment, every word. Had I done enough? Had I honored my father properly? The verdict, when it finally came, was a thunderclap of vindication. The judge ruled unequivocally in my favor. The freedom to display the American Flag Act, she declared, was clear and unambiguous. My flagpole was to remain. The HOA's demands were null and void. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I had won. My father's flagpole stood. But the judge wasn't finished. She acknowledged the vexatious nature of the HOA's pursuit of this case, the emotional distress it had caused me. And then she announced the settlement. It wasn't just about monetary compensation, though that was part of it. No, the judge, with a shrewd sense of poetic justice, added a unique clause to the settlement. As part of the resolution, the HOA was ordered to erect a community flagpole at the entrance of Heritage Oaks to be maintained daily by the HOA president. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. I looked at Brenda, whose face was a picture of stunned satisfaction. Then my eyes landed on Karen Rollins. Her jaw had dropped. Her face, usually so composed, was a mask of utter horror. She had fought to prevent me from displaying a flag, and now, by law, she had to raise one herself every single morning. The irony was so deliciously thick, I almost laughed. My flagpole, my tribute to my father, had not only stood victorious, but had ignited a new, profound, and utterly public daily duty for the very woman who had called it too patriotic. The war might have been won, but the daily battle for Karen Rollins was just beginning. The aftermath of the court ruling was a seismic event in the quiet, meticulously ordered world of Heritage Oaks. The news spread like wildfire, fueled by local news reports that gleefully highlighted the judge's unique settlement clause. My phone rang off the hook with calls from reporters, well-wishers, and even a few HOA-weary residents who offered congratulations and shared their own stories of Karen Rollins's tyrannical rule. I accepted some interviews, making sure to emphasize the federal law and the importance of honoring veterans, always bringing it back to my father. This wasn't just about my flag, it was about a principle, about defending fundamental rights against bureaucratic overreach. The HOA, reeling from the public relations nightmare and the legal defeat, officially announced that they would comply with the court order. I even heard through the grapevine that several board members, previously silent partners in Karen's reign, were now openly questioning her leadership, threatening a vote of no confidence. Her reign, once absolute, was crumbling, and the flagpole, my father's quiet sentinel, was the wrecking ball. The first step was the installation of the community flagpole. It was erected right at the main entrance to Heritage Oaks, a prominent, inescapable symbol of the court's judgment. It was a sturdy, slightly taller version of mine, gleaming white against the perfectly manicured landscape. I watched its installation from a respectful distance, a profound sense of vindication settling over me. This wasn't just a win for me. It was a win for everyone who had ever felt stifled by petty regulations, for every veteran who deserved respect, for every American who believed in the simple, powerful symbolism of the flag. The day of the first flag raising was marked on everyone's calendar, a silent, communal anticipation. I drove past the entrance on my way to my garage, my heart thrumming with a mixture of satisfaction and curiosity. And there she was, Karen Rollins, alone. She stood at the base of the gleaming new flagpole, a pristine American flag, folded into a crisp triangle, clutched in her hands. She wore one of her signature brightly colored tracksuits, a jarring contrast to the solemnity of the moment. Her movements were stiff, her face a mask of bitter resentment, but she was there, fulfilling the court order. I watched as she clipped the flag to the halyards, her fingers fumbling slightly, unused to the task. She then pulled the rope, slowly, begrudgingly, as the flag began its ascent. The fabric unfurled in the gentle morning breeze, the stars and stripes waving proudly against the clear blue sky. For a moment, a profound silence descended, broken only by the soft rustle of the flag. It was a beautiful sight, powerful and evocative, and the irony of Karen Rollins being the one to raise it was almost unbearable. Her face, as she looked up at the ascending flag, was a picture of barely suppressed fury. She looked less like a patriotic citizen and more like a prisoner condemned to a daily ritual of public humiliation. She completed the raising, secured the rope, and then, without so much as a glance around, turned and marched back to her perfectly landscaped home, her posture stiff, her steps purposeful, as if she could outrun the visible defeat that clung to her. I couldn't help but smile, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached my eyes. This wasn't about malice, it was about justice. It was about proving that some things, some values, were bigger than HOA bylaws and petty power struggles. My father's legacy, his quiet strength, had triumphed. The daily ritual quickly became the talk of the town, an almost mythical event that drew curious onlookers and provided endless amusement for the long-suffering residents of Heritage Oaks. Every morning, punctually at 8 o'clock, Karen Rollins would emerge from her house, walk to the community flagpole, and perform the ritual. And every evening, just before sunset, she would return to lower it, folding it with the same grudging precision. I never approached her during these times. I never taunted her or gloated. That wasn't my style, and it wouldn't honor my father's memory. But I often drove by or watched from my porch, a quiet observer of the poetic justice unfolding before me. I noticed the subtle changes in her over time. Initially, her movements were stiff, resentful, almost angry. But as the weeks turned into months, a strange kind of efficiency crept into her actions. Her hands moved with more practiced ease. The knots became tighter. The flag unfurled with a crisp snap. It was still done with a palpable sense of grievance, but the raw, unadulterated fury seemed to have mellowed into a weary resignation. One particularly blustery morning, I was on my way to work when I saw her struggling with the flag. The wind was fierce, whipping the large flag around, making it difficult to attach to the halyards. She wrestled with it, her perfectly coiffed hair now a disheveled mess, her colorful tracksuit flapping wildly. For a moment, I almost stopped, almost offered to help. But I held back. This was her penance, her daily reminder, and she had to face it alone. She eventually managed, pulling the rope with a grunt of effort, her shoulders slumping as the flag finally soared. It was then that I noticed something else. A small group of children from the neighborhood, on their way to the school bus stop, had paused to watch her. Their eyes, wide with curiosity, were fixed on the flag as it rose. They weren't seeing Karen Rollins, the HOA tyrant. They were seeing a woman, an American flag, and a daily ritual that, through sheer repetition, was beginning to embody a different kind of meaning. Perhaps, I thought, even Karen Rollins, through the sheer act of daily patriotism, might inadvertently be teaching a new generation something valuable about respect, about country, and about the quiet power of a flag unfurling in the morning breeze. The flagpole, my father's legacy, was now a daily lesson, not just for Karen, but for the entire community. And I, Logan Prescott, watched it all unfold, a quiet witness to the unexpected ripples of a simple act of remembrance. The rhythmic unfolding of the flag, morning and evening, became an indelible part of the Heritage Oaks soundscape. For me, the flagpole in my own yard remained a deeply personal tribute to my father, a constant presence that brought comfort and pride. But the community flagpole, raised and lowered daily by Karen Rollins, began to take on a life of its own. It became a focal point, a silent, shimmering symbol of a legal battle won, a testament to individual rights, and a constant, visual reminder of how even the most entrenched authority could be humbled. The initial public spectacle of Karen's forced daily ritual slowly faded into routine. The curious onlookers thinned out, replaced by the occasional school bus dropping off children who would pause, briefly, to watch the flag's ascent or descent. I still drove by, or watched from a distance, observing the nuanced changes in Karen's demeanor. The raw anger had indeed mellowed into a weary resignation, but sometimes, very rarely, I thought I detected a subtle shift, a faint, almost imperceptible softening in her posture, a less strained precision in her movements. It was as if, through sheer repetition, the act itself was beginning to chip away at her rigid exterior. Her political capital within the HOA had plummeted, just as I'd heard. The public outcry, coupled with the humiliation of the court order, had severely weakened her standing. Whispers of a recall vote were constant, and she seemed to be losing her iron grip on the board. Other residents, emboldened by my victory, began to push back on what they perceived as excessive HOA rules. The Heritage Oaks, once a suffocatingly uniform landscape, was beginning to show faint cracks of individuality. One particularly significant event occurred on Memorial Day. The community usually organized a small, formal ceremony at the local park, but this year, a group of residents, spurred by the flagpole's presence and my advocacy, decided to hold a spontaneous, informal dow gathering at the community flagpole. I was there, along with many others, a mix of families, veterans, and children. We gathered quietly, a respectful silence falling as the sun began to rise. And then, she arrived, Karen Rollins. She walked to the flagpole, as she did every morning, carrying the folded flag. Her eyes, usually avoiding mine, flickered towards the small crowd, a momentary flicker of surprise, perhaps even discomfort, crossing her face. But she continued her ritual, clipping the flag, pulling the rope. As the flag began to unfurl, a few people in the crowd began to quietly sing the Star-Spangled Banner. More voices joined in, a soft, heartfelt chorus rising into the morning air. Karen paused, her hand on the rope, her gaze fixed on the ascending flag. Her face, usually so stern, seemed to soften, almost imperceptibly. For a few seconds, she just stood there, listening to the voices, watching the flag wave. It wasn't the usual hurried, resentful act. There was a pause, a moment of shared reverence. When the song ended and the flag was fully raised, she secured the rope, not with her usual sharp movements, but with a lingering touch. She then turned, her eyes sweeping over the crowd, and for the first time, I saw something other than resentment in them. A flicker of connection? Regret? I couldn't be sure. She didn't say a word, but she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible nod, before turning and walking away. It was a fleeting moment, but it felt significant, a tiny crack in the formidable wall she had built around herself. Later that day, I received a small, unmarked envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a single handwritten note, simply stating, "Thank you, Mr. Prescott. My father also served." There was no signature, but the elegant, slightly severe handwriting was unmistakably Karen's. I read it again, a wave of surprise washing over me. It was not an apology, not a concession of defeat, but an acknowledgement, a shared understanding that went beyond bylaws and legal battles. Her father was a veteran. The flagpole, my flagpole, had touched something personal in her, something buried deep beneath layers of rigid control. The interaction, brief and unspoken as it was, changed my perception of Karen. She wasn't just a Karen anymore. She was a complex individual, shaped by her own experiences, her own grief, perhaps even her own hidden patriotism. My victory, once a purely personal vindication, now felt like it had opened a dialogue, however silent, with a woman I had only ever seen as an adversary. The community, too, felt subtly different. The flagpole, once a symbol of conflict, was becoming a symbol of unity. Residents started gathering around it on national holidays, sharing stories, exchanging pleasantries. It became a meeting point, a place where neighbors, once isolated by rigid HOA rules, began to connect, to find common ground. Months turned into a year. The daily flag-raising ritual continued. Karen Rollins, despite the decline in her HOA power, still performed her duty. I sometimes caught her looking at my flagpole, then at the community flagpole, a thoughtful expression on her face. I wondered if the forced act had, paradoxically, reconnected her to something she had lost, something about her own father's service, something about shared national pride. One sweltering summer morning, as I was leaving for work, I saw her struggling again. This time, it wasn't the wind. It was the heat. She looked pale, her movements slower than usual. As she clipped the flag, her hand trembled, and she swayed slightly. My instincts kicked in. This wasn't about the lawsuit anymore. This was about a human being struggling. I walked over, approaching cautiously. "Ms. Rollins," I said, my voice gentle. "Are you all right? You look a little faint." She startled, her eyes widening, her guard immediately snapping back into place. "I'm perfectly fine, Mr. Prescott," she snapped, her voice thin. But her complexion was ashen. "No, you're not," I insisted, my voice firm but empathetic. "Let me help you with that. It's too hot to be out here alone." She hesitated, her pride warring with her physical discomfort. For a long moment she just stared at me, her usual haughty demeanor faltering. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. It's quite heavy today," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped forward, taking the halyards from her trembling hands. My father had taught me the proper way to raise a flag, with respect, with dignity. I clipped it quickly, efficiently, and then, together, in an unspoken truce, we raised the flag. The fabric unfurled, crisp and proud, against the bright blue sky. It was a simple act, performed countless times, but this time it was different. It wasn't about a lawsuit, or a settlement, or a punishment. It was about two neighbors, two people, sharing a moment of quiet humanity, united under the very flag that had once been the source of their bitter conflict. The flagpole, a testament to my father's legacy, had not only ensured his flag flew high, but had also, in the most unexpected way, begun to mend a fractured community, and perhaps even a fractured heart. The shared moment at the flagpole, helping Karen raise the flag on that sweltering morning, was a turning point. It wasn't just an act of common decency. It was a bridge, unexpectedly built between two people who had been staunch adversaries. Her quiet acceptance of my help, her hesitant admission of feeling faint, spoke volumes. The rigid barrier between us, reinforced by legal battles and personal animosity, had finally begun to dissolve. From that day forward, our interactions, though still infrequent, held a new, fragile quality. There were no grand apologies, no dramatic declarations. That wasn't Karen's style, nor was it mine. But when we occasionally passed each other on the street, her stiff nod would be accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible dip of her head, and her eyes, though still reserved, held a fleeting spark of something akin to acknowledgement, even respect. I, in turn, offered a more relaxed nod, my own lingering resentment slowly fading in the face of this unexpected, thawing peace. The community, too, felt the shift. The flagpole, which had been the catalyst for so much division, was slowly becoming a symbol of unlikely unity. The daily ritual, performed by Karen, continued to be a quiet reminder of the court's decision, but its meaning subtly evolved. It was no longer just about her punishment. It was about the flag itself, about what it represented, about the shared respect for a nation, even among those who might disagree on smaller matters. The recall vote against Karen Rollins, which had seemed imminent, slowly lost momentum. While she had certainly overstepped her authority, her continued, albeit grudging, compliance with the court order, coupled with the unexpected positive attention the community flagpole brought, seemed to soften Pappery. Residents' opinions. She still had her detractors, but many now viewed her with a more complex understanding, recognizing her stubbornness as perhaps a misguided form of dedication to what she believed was best for the community. The irony of her daily flag raising, once a source of schadenfreude, now had a different flavor, a subtle humor mingled with a strange sense of empathy. I found myself reflecting more deeply on the entire saga. My initial motivation had been pure, to honor my father, to keep his memory alive. But the fight had forced me to stand up for something bigger, for a principle that resonated with so many. And in doing so, I had inadvertently sparked a transformation, not just in my own life, but in the life of my community, and even, in a small but significant way, in the life of my former adversary. One brisk autumn morning, nearly 2 years after the initial confrontation, I was having coffee on my porch when I saw Karen Rollins at the community flagpole. She was meticulously folding the flag, her movements practiced and precise, no longer fumbling or resentful. As she finished, she paused, holding the neatly folded flag in her arms. She looked at it for a long moment, a contemplative expression on her face, something I had rarely seen on her before. Then, she did something entirely unexpected. She turned, not towards her house, but towards mine. She walked slowly, deliberately, the folded flag held carefully against her chest. My heart gave a strange thump. This wasn't a casual encounter. This was purposeful. She stopped at the edge of my lawn, directly beneath my flagpole, which still stood proudly, a silent guardian. Her eyes, less guarded now, met mine. "Mr. Prescott," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, devoid of its usual sharpness. I wanted to thank you." I was genuinely stunned. "Thank me, Ms. Rollins?" I replied, bewildered. "For what?" She looked down at the flag in her arms, then back up at my flagpole. "For reminding me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what this truly means. My father, he passed away when I was very young. He served in Korea. I remember him telling me stories. But I think I lost sight of what his service truly represented, what the flag truly meant somewhere along the way. I became so focused on rules, on order, on appearances, that I forgot the spirit behind it all." She shifted her gaze to my flagpole, then back to me, and for the first time, I saw genuine humility in her eyes. "Your flagpole, Mr. Prescott, your conviction, it forced me to confront my own rigidities. And this," she gestured to the community flag in her arms, "this daily ritual, it became more than a punishment. It became a reminder, a reconnection." Her voice trembled slightly. "Thank you for that, for helping me remember my father, and for reminding me of the broader meaning of patriotism." She extended the folded flag towards me. "I was just about to take this to the HOA office, but I thought, perhaps you would like to have the honor of placing it there today, in the community display case, as a symbol of what we've learned." I stared at the flag, then at Karen, the weight of her words, her unexpected vulnerability, settling over me. This was more than an olive branch. It was a profound act of reconciliation, the genuine admission of growth. The woman who had once called my patriotism divisive was now acknowledging the profound truth behind it. I took the flag from her, my fingers brushing hers, a silent exchange of respect. It was heavy, imbued with the meaning of countless sunrises and sunsets, countless moments of reluctant service, and a growing understanding. "Thank you, Ms. Rollins," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It would be an honor." We walked together, side by side, to the HOA office. The walk was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with a newfound understanding. We were no longer adversaries. We were neighbors, two people who had found common ground, not through agreement, but through conflict, through resilience, and through the unexpected power of a simple, defiant flagpole. My father's legacy, once confined to my personal grief, had expanded, touching a community, and even, in the most surprising way, reaching the heart of the woman who had once tried to silence it. The flagpole still stood, a testament to freedom, But now, it also stood as a beacon of reconciliation, a symbol that even the deepest divisions could be bridged by the quiet, unwavering power of shared humanity.